It's just menopause, Sarah. You need to relax. The doctor, a man half my age with a smug, dismissive smile, slid a prescription for antidepressants across the desk. He didn't see a patient describing terrifying symptoms. He saw a cliché, a hysterical middle-aged woman to be placated and pushed out the door. He didn't know that my pain, my fear, and the brain fog he mocked were very real. And he certainly didn't know that my ex-husband, the man I was about to call, had just become his new boss, the director of the entire hospital. This is the story of a woman who refused to be dismissed and a doctor who learned the hardest lesson of his career: always believe your patient. If you have ever been told your pain isn't real, subscribe now and hit the notification bell, because you are about to witness the most satisfying second opinion in history. The examination room was cold, the paper on the table crinkling with every anxious shift of my weight. I was 49 years old, a successful architect, a woman who built her life on logic, precision, and facts. For the past 6 months, however, my own body had become an alien landscape of bewildering and frightening sensations. It wasn't just hot flashes. It was a strange electric hum under my skin, a debilitating joint pain that made holding a drafting pen an agony, and a terrifying brain fog that would descend without warning, making me forget a client's name mid-sentence. I had meticulously documented every symptom in a small black notebook, a habit from my professional life. I came prepared. I came seeking a partner in my health. Dr. Mark Alistair, with his perfect hair and aggressively white teeth, barely glanced at my notebook. He had the breezy, unearned confidence of a man who had never been truly challenged. He listened to my carefully detailed account with an expression of polite boredom, his fingers tapping a rhythm on his tablet. He asked a few perfunctory questions, not about the electric hum or the severity of the pain, but about my stress levels, my marriage, my emotional state. He was not diagnosing my body. He was diagnosing my gender, my age. Women your age, he began, the phrase itself a dismissal, often experience a high degree of anxiety as they go through the change. The physical symptoms are often psychosomatic, magnified by stress. I tried to interject, to steer him back to my notebook, to the facts. But the pain in my hands, it's not just a feeling. I can barely close my fist some mornings. That's common, he cut in smoothly. Hormonal fluctuations can cause inflammation. Have you tried yoga? I felt a surge of frustration so hot it was almost dizzying. I was not a stressed-out housewife who needed to try yoga. I was a terrified woman whose body was betraying her in ways she couldn't understand. I was asking for tests, for a referral to a specialist, for anything that would take my symptoms seriously. Instead, he stood up, the universal sign for, "This appointment is over." That's when he slid the prescription pad across the desk. "I'm going to start you on a low-dose antidepressant. It will help with the anxiety and take the edge off. And let's schedule a follow-up in 6 months. By then, you should be feeling much more like yourself." 6 months. It felt like a life sentence. I looked from his condescending smile to the useless piece of paper, and a feeling of utter helplessness washed over me. I was trapped. He was the expert, the gatekeeper. I was just another hysterical woman. As I walked out of his office, the fake sympathy in the receptionist's eyes was almost as insulting as the doctor's diagnosis. The world had dismissed me as irrelevant. It was a feeling I had not experienced in a very long time. Will this dismissive diagnosis lead to a shocking karmic reckoning? This story of medical gaslighting is just getting started. If you're hooked by this story of karma, subscribe now so you don't miss the next chapter. My life was built on a foundation of competence. As a partner at one of Chicago's top architectural firms, I managed multi-million-dollar projects. I was known for my attention to detail, my calm under pressure, and my intolerance for incompetence. This medical crisis was a terrifying assault on my very identity. The brain fog threatened my career, the pain threatened my ability to work. I was a woman used to being in control, and for the first time, I felt my control slipping away, not just over my body but over my life. Dr. Alistair was the golden boy of North Shore General, a hospital with a stellar reputation. He was a recent hire, celebrated for his Ivy League credentials and his modern approach. In reality, his modern approach was a form of high-speed, algorithm-driven medicine that prized efficiency over empathy. He saw patients as data points, and my data, female, age 49, reports anxiety, led to a simple, pre-programmed conclusion: menopause. He was the handsome, smiling face of a systemic problem in American medicine, where women's pain, particularly women of a certain age, is so often minimized and psychologized. And then there was Daniel. Daniel Harrison. 25 years ago, he was my world. We were college sweethearts, the kind of couple that everyone assumed was destined for a white picket fence. But life had other plans. My career took me to Chicago, his to a prestigious healthcare administration program on the East Coast. Our breakup was a slow, painful drifting apart, a casualty of ambition and geography. There was no drama, no betrayal, just a sad acceptance that our paths had diverged. We hadn't spoken in over a decade, but I had followed his career from a distance, with a quiet sense of pride. He had become a renowned hospital administrator, known for his innovative reforms and his fierce commitment to patient advocacy. He was a brilliant, compassionate man. He was the man I had once loved, now living a life in a completely separate universe from my own. I had no idea that his universe was about to collide with mine with the force of a supernova. What is this secret connection that could change everything? The antidepressants sat in their bottle on my nightstand, untouched. I refused to be sedated into silence, but Dr. Alistair's dismissal had created a significant obstacle. He was my primary care physician within my insurance network. To see a specialist, I needed his referral. To get a second opinion, I would have to go outside my network and pay thousands of dollars out of pocket, a path I was considering but was not yet ready to take. I decided to try to fight from within the system. I called his office. "The doctor feels the current course of treatment is appropriate," the nurse told me, her voice a flat, bureaucratic wall. "You need to give the medication time to work." I tried to explain that my symptoms were worsening. The electric hum was now a constant, maddening vibration. I had dropped a heavy blueprint roll at work, my grip strength failing without warning. Her response was a suggestion to double my dose after consulting with the doctor, who, of course, was unavailable to speak with me directly. The conflict escalated from neglect to outright obstruction. Every call was met with a polite but firm refusal. I was trapped in a Kafkaesque nightmare, where the only person who could authorize my escape was the very person who had imprisoned me. My frustration began to curdle into a cold, simmering rage. I was not just sick, I was being actively denied care. My work began to suffer. I missed a key deadline for the first time in my career because the brain fog was so thick I couldn't focus on complex structural calculations. My partners at the firm were concerned, their faces a mixture of sympathy and professional anxiety. I was a liability, and I knew it. My meticulously constructed life was beginning to unravel, all because one arrogant doctor refused to listen. Will a secret from the past turn the tables? The ticking clock was my career. Our firm was in the final stages of a bid for the most important project of our careers, designing the new lakefront gallery for a major art foundation. It was a legacy project, the kind of thing that defined an architect's life. The final presentation to the foundation's board was in 1 month, and I was the lead designer. My ability to perform at my peak was not just a personal issue, it affected my partners, my colleagues, my entire company. The pressure was immense. My younger sister, Emily, a sharp-witted ER nurse, was my only real confidant. She was the one subplot of support in my isolated drama. "He's gaslighting you, Sarah," she said fiercely during one of our nightly calls. "I see doctors like him all the time. They're lazy, and they're arrogant. You can't give up. You have to go over his head." "To who?" I asked, my voice hollow with exhaustion. "The hospital administration? I'm just an anonymous patient. They'll just back their golden boy." It was a few nights later, unable to sleep, that I was scrolling through a digital copy of the Chicago Business Journal. And there it was. A headline that made my heart stop. North Shore General welcomes visionary new director, Daniel Harrison. I stared at the picture. It was him. Older, with flecks of gray at his temples, but unmistakably the same kind eyes, the same determined set of his jaw. The article detailed his incredible track record and his mission to make North Shore the most patient-centric hospital in the country. The universe had just handed me a nuclear option. But could I use it? The complexity of our past, the 25 years of silence, felt like a chasm. Calling him felt like an admission of failure, a desperate plea to an old ghost. Emily was relentless. Call him, she urged. This isn't about your pride, Sarah. This is about your life. After another night of pain and fear, I finally agreed. My hand trembled as I found the main switchboard number for the hospital and asked to be put through to the director's office. But will the next event shock everyone? This is Daniel Harrison. His voice was deeper than I remembered, but still calm and authoritative. For a moment, I couldn't speak. Hello? Is anyone there? He asked. Daniel, I finally managed, my voice a dry whisper. It's Sarah. Sarah Connolly. The silence on the other end of the line was profound. I could almost hear the gears turning in his mind, bridging a 25-year gap in an instant. Sarah, he said finally, his voice softening with a warmth that almost broke me. My God, how are you? I didn't waste time with pleasantries. The desperation in my voice was its own explanation. I told him everything. About my symptoms, my notebook, and about Dr. Alastair's dismissive diagnosis. I didn't cry. I presented it like I would a case study to a client. Fact-based, logical, and damning. I was an architect building a case for my own life. He listened without interruption. When I finished, he didn't offer platitudes or sympathy. He asked one simple, powerful question. When can you be here? This was the turning point. It wasn't just that he believed me, it was the immediacy of his belief. The validation was so absolute, so instantaneous, it felt like a physical weight being lifted off my chest. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't hysterical. I was sick, and he knew it. I can be there tomorrow morning, I said. Good, he replied, his voice shifting from warm old friend to formidable hospital director. Come to my office at 9. And Sarah, don't worry. We're going to get to the bottom of this. The next morning, I walked back into North Shore General. But I didn't go to the waiting room. I went to the executive suites on the top floor. Daniel greeted me with a brief, professional hug. He looked at me, his eyes full of a concern that was both personal and professional. Are you ready? He asked. I nodded. He picked up his phone. Please ask Dr. Alastair to come to my office immediately. Tell him it's an urgent patient matter. Then he looked at me. Let's go for a walk. He led me not to a conference room, but directly to Dr. Alastair's office. We were standing right outside his door when Alastair came rushing down the hall, looking annoyed at being summoned. He saw me first, and a flash of irritation crossed his face. Then he saw the man standing next to me. His eyes widened, and the color drained from his face as he recognized the hospital's new director. The arrogant smirk was gone, replaced by a look of pure, dawning terror. How will this shocking secret change their lives forever? This incredible twist has you hooked? Subscribe now for more stories of delicious karma. Dr. Alastair's jaw worked, but no sound came out. He looked from me to Daniel and back again, his mind frantically trying to compute the impossible reality of the situation. Mr. Harrison, sir, he finally stammered. I wasn't aware you had a meeting on this floor. Daniel didn't smile. His expression was as cold and hard as granite. "Dr. Alastair," he said, his voice quiet but carrying an unmistakable edge of command. "This is Sarah Connolly. I believe you're acquainted. She is a patient at this hospital. My hospital. And she has some concerns about the quality of her care. She and I are going to go into your office right now and discuss them." The immediate consequence for Alastair was a complete and total evisceration of his authority and arrogance. The power dynamic hadn't just shifted, it had been annihilated. He fumbled with his keys, his hands shaking, and unlocked his office door. The three of us walked in. I sat in the patient chair, the one where I had been so casually dismissed. Daniel remained standing, a towering figure of judgment. Alastair scurried behind his desk as if it were a shield. "I don't understand," Alastair said, his voice a weak imitation of its former confidence. "Mrs. Connolly's case is a straightforward presentation of perimenopausal symptoms." "Stop talking," Daniel cut him off, his voice dangerously low. "And start listening. I have read Mrs. Connolly's notes. Not your dismissive two-sentence summary, but her own, detailed notes. The ones you didn't bother to look at. Her symptoms warrant a full neurological and rheumatological workup, starting immediately. Instead, you prescribed antidepressants and told her to try yoga. Is that the standard of care you practice at my hospital, doctor?" The reaction from Alastair was a complete collapse. All the bravado, all the Ivy League arrogance, dissolved into a puddle of pure, pathetic fear. He knew in that moment that his career as the Golden Boy was over. Will they overcome this new challenge? Daniel's first action was to personally escort me to the office of the Chief of Internal Medicine, a brilliant, empathetic woman named Dr. Lena Hansen. "Dr. Hansen," Daniel said, "this is my friend, Sarah. I want you to run every test you can think of. Spare no expense. I want answers." Dr. Hansen treated me with a gentle respect that felt like a lifeline. For the next 2 days, I underwent a battery of tests: MRIs, blood panels, neurological exams. The challenge was enduring the physical and emotional exhaustion of the process, but for the first time, I felt a flicker of hope. I was finally being heard. My growth began in that sterile hospital room. I was no longer a victim. I was a case study, a catalyst. I realized my fight was not just about me. How many other women had sat in Dr. Alastair's office, or offices just like it, and been told their pain was just anxiety? How many had been sent home with a useless prescription, their real underlying conditions left to fester? The anger I felt was no longer just for myself. It was for all of them. The diagnosis came on the 3rd day. Dr. Hansen sat on the edge of my bed, her expression serious. "Sarah, you have a meningioma," she said. "It's a slow-growing tumor on the lining of the brain. It is benign, and it is completely operable. But its location is pressing on nerves that are causing all of your symptoms: the pain, the fog, the vibrating sensation. It has nothing to do with menopause." The validation was so profound, so absolute, that I began to cry. Not tears of fear, but tears of pure, unadulterated relief. My transformation was cemented in that moment. I had my vengeance, but now I had something more, a cause. But what awaits them in the next confrontation? While I prepared for surgery, Daniel prepared for war. He launched a full-scale internal investigation into Dr. Alastair, who had been placed on immediate, indefinite administrative leave. Daniel's team began a quiet but thorough audit of Alastair's patient files from the last 2 years, specifically focusing on female patients between the ages of 40 and 60. The pattern that emerged was horrifying. It was a clear and consistent history of dismissal. Dozens of women presenting with symptoms ranging from chronic fatigue to severe joint pain had been diagnosed with anxiety, stress, or menopause and sent away with antidepressants. The preparation for the climax was the meticulous collection of this data, the building of an airtight case of not just a single act of negligence, but a pattern of systemic medical malpractice and gender bias. My surgery was a success. As I recovered, Daniel would visit me, not just as a friend, but as an ally. He showed me the data he was compiling. "He won't just lose his job, Sarah," Daniel said, his face grim. "I'm going to make sure he never practices medicine again." The final confrontation would not be a simple firing. It would be a formal hearing with the state medical board. My case was the catalyst, but the testimony of the other women he had dismissed, whom Daniel's team was now contacting, would be the final crushing blow. The final confrontation will reveal everything, won't it? The medical board hearing was held in a sterile, intimidating room that felt more like a courtroom. Dr. Alastair sat with his lawyer, looking pale and diminished. He had lost his swagger, his golden boy tan. He just looked like a scared, small man. Daniel was not there as a hospital administrator, but as a witness for the board. I was the first to testify. I walked to the witness stand, no longer a patient, but an architect of my own justice. I didn't speak with emotion. I spoke with facts. I presented my original notebook, a log of my symptoms, my pain, my fear. I told the story of my dismissal, of being told it was just menopause. Then, I told them about the brain tumor he had missed. A low murmur went through the room. But the true climax was not my story alone. It was the chorus. One by one, 3 other women, found by Daniel's investigation, told their stories. A woman whose chronic fatigue, dismissed by Alastair as stress, was finally diagnosed by another doctor as an aggressive form of lupus. A teacher whose debilitating joint pain, labeled menopausal arthritis, was actually late-stage Lyme disease. The stories were all different, but they all had the same chilling refrain. He didn't listen. He told me it was in my head. The final, damning evidence was presented by the board's own investigator, who confirmed the statistical pattern of misdiagnosis Daniel's team had uncovered. The vengeance was complete. It wasn't a loud, angry confrontation. It was a quiet, methodical, and irrefutable dismantling of a man's career, built on a foundation of data and the undeniable truth of women's voices, finally being heard. The board's decision was unanimous. Dr. Mark Alastair's medical license was permanently revoked. The revocation of Dr. Alastair's license sent shockwaves through the Chicago medical community. It was a powerful public statement against medical gaslighting. At North Shore General, Daniel used the scandal as a catalyst for radical change. He instituted the Sarah Connolly Patient Advocacy Program, a new department dedicated to ensuring that patient concerns were heard and taken seriously, with patient advocates assigned to every major department. My own life was transformed. After a few months of recovery, I returned to my firm, my mind clearer and sharper than ever. We won the bid for the Lakefront Gallery. It would be the masterpiece of my career. But I had a new project as well. I used my story, my platform as a successful professional, to create a non-profit foundation dedicated to fighting gender bias in medicine. The emotional resolution was not in Alastair's ruin, but in the positive, life-saving changes that rose from its ashes. Daniel and I found our way back to a new, different kind of love. Not
the romantic love of our youth, but a deep, powerful friendship built on mutual respect and a shared battle. We had saved each other in a way. He had saved my life, and he had helped him fulfill his mission to create a better, more compassionate kind of healthcare. 2 years later, he stood beside Daniel at the ribbon-cutting ceremony for the new Patent Advocacy Wing at North Shore General, named in my honor. He leaned over and whispered, "See? I told you we'd get to the bottom of it." He smiled, looking at the building filled with patients who would now be heard, who would now be believed. My vengeance had not been an ending. It had been a groundbreaking, a foundation for something that would save countless other lives. Being dismissed by a medical professional is a frightening and deeply invalidating experience. This story is a powerful reminder to trust your own body, to advocate for yourself relentlessly, and to never let anyone tell you that your pain isn't real. Have you ever had to fight to be heard by a doctor? What advice would you give to someone in that position? Share your story and your strengths in the comments below. If this story of empowerment resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more emotional tales of justice.